Rick Howard from the NSCA, and I need to preface this a little one carefully. Rick is representing and going to be speaking on behalf of the NSCA, and Rick is one of the folks that has been incredibly passionate and incredibly driven and was one of the early mentors when I first got into the field. And as you may see in a moment, I don't know if his video will show, but Rick is actually currently in the hospital and couldn't join us after a small heart issue. And not to give too much information there, but he insisted on joining us and being a part of this and delivering for all of you today. And so he is very passionate, incredible trooper, and we are really, really grateful that he's able to join us and speak today a little bit on what the NSCA has been able to do over the past 10, 15, 20 years is they've really worked and done amazing things in the professionalization of the strength and conditioning field and the folks who are working as strength conditioning coaches, and certainly something that I think we can learn from as folks passionate about moving the entire field of coaching forward.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the great introduction. And on behalf of the National Strength and Conditioning Association, I can't tell you how excited I am to be part of the USCCE event going on today. I really think we're getting all the right people at the table to do the right things. And it's exciting to see not only people who are from, as Katrina mentioned, from the government level, or as Paul mentioned, from NCAA, all these different organizations, but even all the way down to the grassroots, boots on the ground level, because it's going to take all of us together to make this work. My presentation today is just going to focus on the NSCA and kind of the professionalization of coaching for strength and conditioning professionals, how that actually came to be. So I'm going to mention to you that I am an instructor at the adjunct professor, I'm actually an assistant professor now at Westchester University. Joe Eisenman, Tony Marino, and I are running an LTAD playground opportunity, which we work through the NSCA to do as well, which is a boots on the ground initiative going all around the country, trying to make sure that we're providing the right opportunity for kids to be physically active throughout the life course. So what I'm going to talk about with you today is how we professionalize coaching in strength and conditioning. And in order to do that, it certainly didn't happen overnight. So what we need to talk about is the overview of strength and conditioning, how it kind of came to be. The first strength and conditioning organization, which you probably guessed, is the National Strength and Conditioning Association. There's a great divide that happened along the way, but I think we're now in a great reunification and path forward type of an opportunity, which you can certainly see by having us all together today. Mel Siff, great sports scientist, author of wonderful books that many of you have read if you're in the strength and conditioning field. His most notable tome is a fantastic book called Super Training, which takes a great lot of weed and a lot of the stuff that's come from it we're still using today. But he talked about the science didn't arise overnight. It's a culminating point of thousands of years of trial and error methods of training. So I think a lot of us look at it today that strength and conditioning, sport coaching, all the different science we have in exercise science, we've always known. We have not. And a lot of time it's come through the trial and error, and it hasn't been professionalized, especially in strength and conditioning, until relatively recently. So if we look at the overview of strength and conditioning, I know it was just recently mentioned that I am actually coming to you from a hospital, but here's a picture of me a couple weeks ago, so I'm fine. Everything is good, so just want everybody to know that. We do have a strength culture, not just in the United States, but all around the world. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that more on the next slide. But there's also the iron game. When we talk about strength and conditioning, a lot of times people go back, they think of free weights, they think of bodybuilders, and they think of competitive lifting of heavy objects. And there are all kinds of videos and testimonials going all around that show how that's come down for generations and generations. It was never really well constructed or organized, but it's occurred over the history of time anyway. And then we recently got into the scientific discipline, specific training to produce strength. This hasn't always been the case. Part of what we had found was that people would train and they would go to whoever they could find who also trained to get some words of wisdom from them. It didn't necessarily apply to that individual, but that's kind of how the whole strength and conditioning field started. So we go back to the strength culture, and I'll take you slowly over here first to the pictures on the right. The bottom for everybody in strength and conditioning is one of the earliest recordings of progressive resistance in strength and conditioning with Milo, who would, as a youngster, would be able to pick up his calf, and as he got bigger, the calf got bigger, so as a man, he could pick up the bull. So as we talked about resistance training, we kind of look at it from that perspective, that it has to be gradual, it has to be progressive, and it has to be sensible. We don't see that a lot still, and so that's why we created the need that there really needed to be certification in strength and conditioning. the picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger for a lot of people and Joe Weider handing him his Sandow Trophy kind of indicates where our, I guess, familiarization or popularity of strength and conditioning in the U.S. came, was actually from watching the old bodybuilding shows and then Arnold as an actor coming through. The big reason I wanted to point that out, however, is the trophy that he hands over is known as the Eugene Sandow Trophy. The Sandow Trophy is kind of the greatest trophy in all of bodybuilding for bodybuilders to actually obtain. But Sandow himself is part of what we look at here, the scientific physical culture pioneers of strength training culture. He actually was one of the first people to advocate for strength and conditioning and for sports to be part of a physical education curriculum. We haven't always had a physical education curriculum, nor has there always been strength and conditioning as a component of it. So if we go through the strength culture phases now, the first phase is the 6th century BCE, which is the Milo picture on the bottom, all the way up through now. So it's kind of the age of strength, and strength is still very important. We've learned a lot more about strength and conditioning than we've ever known. Strength actually has a much higher incidence of causing us to live longer, fuller lives. Strength is inexorably linked to our motor skill development. Our motor skill development is strongly linked to our ability to be confident and competent in our motor skill development and in our ability to be physically active for a lifetime. So it's very important that we focus on strength. It's not just something that we do to have mirror muscles, as they say. We do it because we know it's very necessary for our overall growth and development and our physical literacy throughout the life course. The barbell era started in the 30s, went to about the end of the 60s relatively. A lot of that happened through when weight training was first brought to the United States, and people started to look at the methods and then bodybuilding, and we saw how that kind of came to play as well. Next was the science connection or disconnect, we often refer to it, era. DeLorme had the DeLorme method of resistance training, how to gradually progress your workout safely and sensibly, which we don't always see. Kenneth Cooper, with the coining of aerobics, kind of changed the direction and focus of resistance training somewhat. Then when Boyd Epley came along, we call that the professionalization era. That's when the NSCA was formed in 1978. I'll tell you a story about that in a couple of slides when we get there too. And then where we're really hoping we get is to this age of collaboration where we all work together on this common goal. So here's a quote from Kenneth Cooper that many of us in the strength and conditioning field are still looking at now, because it got to the point where people felt that strength training really wasn't much more than making you look good. So even when we're working with kids out in the field trying to get them stronger so that they play better, the philosophy from parents is just let them run, just make them tired, and then everything will be great. But we know that's not the case, but we do know that aerobics are important, as is strength and conditioning. It's all important. But this is the great divide that happened, unfortunately, was that a lot of people said, well, gee, as long as I focus on my aerobic fitness, the rest will take care of itself. And we know that's not necessarily true. That's what really led to the professionalization of strength and conditioning. The slide over here, Boyd Epley on the bottom right, who is the founder of the National Strength and Conditioning Association. He was a pole vaulter at Nebraska, hurt his back. He rehabilitated himself in the gym by doing some resistance training. It caught the attention of the football coach who wanted to know what he was doing, and it actually helped him to set up the first recognized strength and conditioning facility in college sports. From there, of course, that's what started the association. He got letters together, personally mailed them all out. Nobody knows anything about mailing letters anymore, but back in the 70s, that's what they did. He wrote letters, put them in envelopes, put stamps on them, mailed them, had to get the addresses. He had 100 strength coaches respond to him. People who are interested in strength and conditioning had their first meeting, and that's what became the NSCA. So the NSCA was the first organization to actually try to bridge that gap between science and practical application, and Paul mentioned that a little while ago too. So the CSCS is a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and we also have the NSCA certified personal trainer, which is available in 5 languages. They are both accredited by the private organization that does such, the NCCA. The NSCA now has 5 peer-reviewed journals, so we're working very tirelessly on making sure that we do bridge that gap between the science and practical applications so that coaches get the information. One of those peer-reviewed journals is actually NSCA Coach, and all of the information in that journal is targeted specifically to coaches. The NSCA hosts state, regional, and national conferences on a variety of strength and conditioning topics. We've invited several people who are in attendance today and who are presenting today to present at our conferences, and they've been very successful. And we also have additional certifications and certificates. So the LTAD playground fellows that I talked to you before, Tony and Joe and I are also working with NSCA. We're creating an LTAD certificate for coaches, and we're kind of aiming it not at the strength and conditioning professional necessarily, but for your coach who decides that he or she is going to coach a team, wants to know how best to actually put together the strength and conditioning principles, because the main focus of strength and conditioning is to improve performance and to reduce the risk of results. So we want to make sure that all of that is taken care of for every kid, because too often in every level we see that a lot of kids aren't really prepared for the rigors of the sport they're playing. So what ends up happening is we say, oh, they're overtraining, they're doing too much. Well, yeah, that's true, but we also have to look at the volume of how much work they're doing overall. How much training do they get? It's not just the sports participation. We have to focus on the training percentage of it as well. So these are great things that are coming up, and I'm really excited to be part of it. I'm excited to share it with you here today. So here's some more of the NSCA efforts. You can see over in the bottom right, we did a position statement on long-term athletic development, which we think is an excellent framework in terms of getting kids towards being physically literate throughout the life course. We look at it as a cradle-to-grave strategy. It's not just trying to get kids to be athletic and good for now. It's trying to get everybody to have the skills, the confidence, the competence, technical and tactical skills, the social cycle elements, and everything else they need to be competitive and happy for the rest of their lives, and always find whatever that type of activity is that pleases them to build on their physical literacy. So what we're doing right now through our LTAD playgrounds is we're looking to create a unified strategic LTAD plan and share that long-term vision. That's why we do what we do at the local grassroots level. We ran 5 of them last year. We're looking to run a few more next year in different cities and communities to get all of these partners together. Katrina showed a nice slide of some of the programs that are out there, programs that work. We try to bring those types of people in to actually share what does work and how can each community take that program and move it further along. And that's part of the collaboration part, and that's what's so exciting about today's adventure, is getting all of the people together in the schools, community, rec centers, youth sports, private sector, wherever it is, to figure out how best to create the solution for the kids who will be able to train and do what they need to do moving forward, and then to coordinate and think the process over immediate results. So a lot of times we always had the win by Friday mentality, and that's not necessarily so. We want to make sure that we have long-term success for everybody who's participating. So it's going to take the time, the people, and the resources, and the accountability to do it. Without accountability, it's just another piece of paper out there that we need to get past. So without alignment, there's no accountability. So one of our big dreams of being here at the table today is to be able to be part of that process to help with that alignment and the creation, collaboration, and coordination to move forward. I have one more slide over here you can see with the ultimate pill for resistance training, which is put together by Dr. Avery Fagenbaum. Resistance training is more than most people think, and a lot of times people will kind of dismiss resistance training in terms of doing other types of work. But when you can see the increase in strength and power, muscle mass, quality of life, better motor skills, increased injury resistance, all of these things are certainly very important for all of us throughout the life course. This slide is a mess, and it's a mess on purpose. Because as Katrina pointed out, there are a lot of programs going on out there. We have lots of measurements of where we are. And if you look up at the top right, our overall physical activity level, D-. So you look at our Project Play, we've got a C. Lots of wonderful things going on at West Virginia. And you can see some of the organizations that are all part of trying to get kids to be more active. The American Development Model, which was mentioned earlier through the USOPC, to make sure that we get all that stuff put together. Different things from Shape America, the Organization for Physical Education, how all that works, and how it fits into their national coaching standards and guidelines. American College of Sports Medicine, all these different organizations have information out there, but what's really necessary and what we feel we need now is the reunification of us all getting together on the same page, working together on that path forward. Here are a couple of the references I have if anybody's interested in any of the things that I discussed today with you briefly. And here's my contact information on the right and the NSCA's contact information on the left. We do run a Facebook page, which people can certainly go to. There's one for our long-term athletic development group as well. And I'm sorry I'm not there to be with you today, but I'm happy to be here in general. So I look forward to talking to all of you in the near future. And I thank you all so much for being part of the presentation.